All right, so here we have our Microsoft Word document. The first thing that I do have on there is you will notice that I have my show hide paragraph symbols turned on. You can see you turn them on and off right here within your home ribbon. It's good to have your show hide paragraph symbols turned on so you can see exactly what's going on. My ruler is also on. And to turn your ruler on, you go under View and make sure that your ruler is set there, and that would help to make sure that you can set tabs and such. As a fast mini review, right here on the left-hand side of our ruler is going to be where we have the type of tab. This one right here is left, and if you're not sure, remember you always can mouse over. When you mouse over, it'll pop up and it'll tell you which one it is. So we go left, center, right, decimal, bar, first line indent, and then hanging indent, and then it repeats. To set a tab, make sure the type of tab is correct on your ruler, and then you can click anywhere on the ruler itself, and it will set the tab. And I'm going to change to a right tab, and I'll set a right tab here, and then I can see when I type, text is lining up on the left, and here it's lining up on the right. So just, again, as a review of setting that. To delete your tabs once they are set on there, one of the fastest things you can do is click and drag down. If your tab is not set in the right spot, you can click and drag it to any location on the ruler as well, so don't forget about that. As a review, Callie, do you remember what type of tab is set where by default? Lots of times on there, but what space between them? Yes, so a left tab is set by default every half inch. So if I go tab, 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 that's the spacing on it because that is just the default settings. There are some things that are set by default on Microsoft Word. For example, our margins. And our margins is this gray area up here. So we can see right now my default margin that I have set is 1 inch. To change that, go ahead and click on Layout. And then when you go to the Layout tab, you're going to see that we have all kinds of options under Layout where we can change some items. So if you don't have Word open, you should have Word open. Now you should be on Layout, okay? Because I want you to see where you're going to do this. So under Layout, you're going to see over here on the left-hand side under our Page Setup section, we have an option right here for margins. Now, when I click on the drop-down menu for margins, you can see right now I am set at normal. And normal does say 1 inch left, right, bottom, top. There are others that are preset. Now mine, it says last custom setting is 1 inch, but it will vary depending on the last time that you used Microsoft Word. But there is an option for narrow, moderate, wide, mirrored, all these different options. So we're going to go ahead and change our margins to narrow. And when you do that, you're going to see what used to be 1 inch for our gray area on the sides of our ruler is now a 1/2 inch because we have what is considered a narrow margin. Now, we change our margins because our margins is what gives us space on the edge of our documents for printing. So my printer just got fixed. It was not working earlier this week, but it is working now. That makes me very happy. And this is a laser printer here. And with a laser printer, what happens is it actually is an imaging drum that takes the toner and actually burns it or etches it on the paper, so that's how it sticks. If you've ever seen toner, it's powdery and it can get all over. So what would happen is all printers require a certain amount of space at the edge of the printer. Otherwise, if it printed right to the edge, it would get all of that ink or toner all over the inside of the printer, and then the printer would actually not work after a while because it would get gunked up with the ink or toner. So I will let you know that this printer that I have right here, the closest it can get to the edge of the paper is a 1/4 inch, so 0.25. If you can make it print right to the edge on your document, on any document, you can say, oh, it's going to go right to the edge, but the printer will actually cut it off and not allow it to print. When you see different things and they have images or things and it goes right to the edge of the paper, so like when I open up this book, do you see how it has printing right to the edges? typically what happens is they actually print that, and then they have a big cutter that actually cuts it off. Because again, you don't want to have it in a printer and then have all of that extra gunk around it. So that's how we're going to be able to use margins. And remember that margins are going to be found under the layout ribbon within Microsoft Word. The other thing that we have is we have our paper by default is set in portrait mode. So portrait mode means it's going to be 8.5 inches wide and 11 inches tall. That is our standard piece of paper, 8.5 by 11. This is also the way that the camera people take their picture for your ID. That's why it's called portrait mode. Sometimes when we design and we make things, we actually want to make it in this mode. Do we know what this way is called? Landscape. So it's like if you are going to go take a picture of a beautiful mountainside or the fall leaves this weekend, you want to have wider view of the landscape, so you would switch it to landscape. We will also change to landscape within our layout ribbon. And you can see there's an option right here where it says orientation. We can go ahead and set that to landscape. Now notice when you change your orientation to landscape, your ruler space just changed because now your paper is 11.5 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall. And again, we have our margin set to 1/2 inch. The other thing that we are going to work with is going to be our headers and footers, okay? So headers and footers are going to be things that are either on the top of the page or the bottom of the page. Guess what the top of the page section is called? Header. Bottom of the page section is called footer. Just like if you're standing, head's on the top, feet are on the bottom. Unless you're doing a handstand, then kudos to you that you can do a handstand. But in our Microsoft Word world, we're going to do the top portion is going to be a header, and the bottom portion is going to be a footer. Now, headers and footers are very important to use because, for example, a lot of times you create a long document, you actually have to go through and put page numbers. I will tell you, you should never, ever, ever physically type a page number on a page. Let the software do it for you. So here's an example of a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens Personal Workbook. Now, when I look at the top of this page, and I know it doesn't matter, you don't have to read it, but you can see on the very top that there's text. Right here is the page number, and then we have the title of the book, and then on this side is going to be the actual chapter, and then we have a page number. So this header is set up with odd and even pages. Basically, what they're trying to do when you open it up is on the outside edges of their header is going to be your page number, and then on the inside is going to then be like your chapter or your book title. And that is very common. You will also see it kind of has a footer section here where it actually has like the chapter symbol number. So when you are using a software program, you want the header and footer feature to do your page numbers for you automatically. Even if, for example, if Logan and I were working on a joint project and Logan was doing pages 1 through 17 and I was starting on page 18, I would still not type page 18 on the very first page. What I do in my headers and footers when I insert my page number is I actually go through and say I'm starting with page number 18. He can have 1 through 17, I'm starting on 18. So there are always different ways to do that. When you have a book like this, you would actually have each chapter be considered what is called a section. And then each section can have a different header or footer on it. Page numbers will stay the same, but you can then change the text that would appear on there. So we want to make sure that we use the right feature. Can you physically type in page numbers? Yes. It is not the right way to use the software, though. So to get to your headers and footers, you will notice that I can see the gray area above my vertical ruler right here. So to get into your headers, the easiest way to get to it is you actually are going to click right there. So when I click in that section, you can see I am in my headers because now notice what I have is I have a context specific ribbon. Okay, very fancy term. The ribbon that is open right now relates to what I'm modifying. So if you had a picture on your page, if you clicked on the picture, you would have a ribbon for formatting a picture. We are in a header, so we have information that we can only set up and do in a header section. Working from left to right, you will notice that we have header, footer, then there's a whole section on page number, date and time, document info, quick part, pictures, online, and going over and over and over. So the other thing that's interesting to notice is look at the ruler now for my vertical ruler. There's only a tiny little bit of white space. Because we are in our headers, that is the space that we have for the header. So I could type in there, and what will happen is it'll actually push down my text for the body of my document. So it's going through and showing me my space for my lines. And you will see that the main part of my document is all grayed out because we are in the section for us to format our header. So some cool things that you can do with headers is when you go under their heading section here, there are some pre-built headers in there. They look kind of cool. You can go ahead and choose pre-built headers. You also have an option under page numbers to go ahead and insert page numbers on the top of the page, bottom of the page, or in your margins, or current position. All those features there. I like to show off this one, this facet odd page one, because you will notice it actually gives you a pretty cool color block. Now, if you went through and actually set your color scheme for your document, then this would change to match the color scheme of your document. And what will happen, and I'll show you, is if I get new pages, you will notice that my page number automatically increases every time with a new page. I don't do anything, it just knows I'm on page 8. So that is an awesome feature. You don't have to type it, it just knows. Now I'm in the main part of my Microsoft Word document. To get back to my header, I just double click up in that area, and then you can see I'm modifying my header again. I don't really want that header, but I can click over there and you'll notice that I also get a drawing toolbar and a picture toolbar because that is what that header is made with, and I'm just going to delete that because that's not really what I want to have. So I like to be able to go through and use this date and time feature as well. When I click on date and time, you will notice that it pops up and I have lots of different available formats. I don't even have to remember what day it is. It would automatically put it in there. But this is a super cool feature. Max and I are working on a document. He's working on it today, and he puts the date on it. And then when I work on it, it'll automatically update the date. So he works it on Thursdays and Fridays, and on Monday and Tuesday, I'm going to work on it. But this is the box you have to realize. Right here is this teeny little box that sometimes students are going to miss where it says update automatically. And this is a feature that you're going to have to use on an assignment. Sometimes you want it, sometimes you don't. So for example, Max and I working on this collaborative document, I always wanted to have the current date on it, so I would have that check mark checked. But if I was sending a letter home to your parents because you're doing such an amazing job in class, I want the date to be just the date I sent it, not necessarily always update. So I would not always use that update automatically. That's not our lunch mod. Okay, so I could go ahead and select my date and time. Now, I did not choose automatic update. How can I tell? Notice my text looks like standard text. So I'm going to delete that and I'm going to do it again. And if I click on update automatically and insert it, you will notice that there's actually a text box and it gives me an option to update. Because I have the time on there, when time passes, it would automatically update that time. For my next part, I have to save this document. Don't worry about you doing this right now. I just want to show you this. So I just named my document, sample document for class October 9th, 2020. There is a really cool feature because you know how Max and I are working on this document together? Sometimes we are going to be sharing the exact same folder, and like Max is trying to remember, I have a printout of this paper, but I don't remember where it's located. So under document info from this drop-down menu, I can go ahead and choose file path. And this will only work when it's saved. Because when I do file path, notice what it does. I should have hit enter. Is it says H info processing sample document for class October 9th. So it says the file where it's located, my H drive, under my folder called information processing. Then it actually gives me the name of the document. So again, in your headers and footers toolbar, you're going to find that under document info, and then that would be file path. It gives the name of the file and where it's saved. You will have to use that on some different features. The other thing that you have is to get to your footers. You can go ahead and click right here on your ribbon, and it would pop you to your footer, or you can just scroll up and down and click in there. Whatever is easiest for you. We do have an option here to have a different first page and different odd and even pages. Oftentimes people would design where your title of your book or your document would be page 1. So it would say, I'm going to have a different first page, and then you would have table of contents, and you'd have different odd and even. So that is going to be how that would show up. We also have an option here of show document text. If I take that off, then you're not going to see anything that would be in between there. So that's why that would show up that way. When I am done in my header and footer and I want to get off, I can get off two ways. I can click on Close Header and Footer. You will notice that I can still see my header, but my main cursor is typing in here. Okay, and then this, my header information is grayed out because that's not my editing format. I can double click to get back in there, and then I get back and forth into my main document. The other feature that we have is going to be our spell check. Okay, that you would find under your review. Okay, so we were working in our home ribbon, layout ribbon, and then under review ribbon, we have our spelling and grammar. You will also notice that you have a thesaurus right within Microsoft Word and a word count. By default, down here on the bottom, it will tell you your entire words on your document. By default, you don't have to do anything. But if you needed just not the directions, but the part that you typed, you could go ahead and select it and then click word count, and it will tell you all of your paragraphs, your lines, your words, and your pages that you have selected. Okay, so that is going to be found within there. You will also notice that you have read text aloud and highlight each word as it's read. So if you were working in Microsoft Word, you have that feature available to you. It would work if I actually had text. Okay, so you have that option built right into Microsoft Word to be able to go through and do some of that work. There is a translate and a language button, but I will tell you, for those of you that are taking a different language, just because you type it in English and you hit translate doesn't necessarily mean that it's translated correctly, or your English or your other teacher will realize that you are translating a way that you don't know how, and you will lose points. They are well aware of that feature. Line spacing is something else that we have done. Do you remember where line spacing is? What ribbon? Josh, do you remember? So it's not under review and it's not under layout. What other ribbon have we worked in? Home. So under your home ribbon, you're going to find under your paragraph section of your ribbon is going to be your drop-down menu for line spacing. So we are going to be doing something else with line spacing as well as alignment. I do want to remind you that we are going to be working, when we first start out, we're always going to make sure that we set all of our text to no spacing. You want that to be the very first thing you do, because if you do a bunch of formatting and then set to no spacing, all that formatting would be undone. Questions? Okay, let me stop my video.